What up? What up? Welcome to Recovery Rockstars Uncut. I'm your host, Kevin Z. On today's episode, I chat with my boy, Sam. Sam is the man. Not gonna lie, we kind of nerd out about soccer for a little bit. I actually take a trip down memory road, which was really fun. Sam shares about his struggles with Xanax and alcohol and how he got sober, and now dude's got a kick-ass podcast that I'm going to plug, but not to the end of this podcast. Hope you enjoy, and now let's get into the show.
Welcome to Recovery Rockstars Uncut, uniting the recovery community with raw and real stories. Your host, Kevin Z, puts the light on people and brands that are rocking the recovery lifestyle. So you want to be a rock superstar? RecoveryRockstars.com. Now, here's Kevin.
Hi, a good buddy of mine, he posted something on LinkedIn about it. He was like, if you haven't watched it, you got to watch it. And then you're going to end up buying like their gear and like finding ways to watch them and like cheering for them and all that sort of stuff.
That's so funny because after watching it, I'm trying to find Wrexham gear.
So,
it's kind of crazy that Ryan and Rob just decided to buy a team like in the middle of COVID, which is fantastic. But the dynamic, because they keep on going in the documentary back from being in LA and seeing, Rob and Ryan behind the scenes, and then going directly to Wrexham and like talking to the fans and talking to the owners. And dude, it's so fucking rad.
Dude, and honestly, the first time I saw the preview for it, I thought like I didn't know if it was like a show or something. And then I realized it was like a real team and like it really did this. And like it made my excitement a lot more. But at first I thought it was like a spinoff of a Ted Lasso type thing,
So totally.
Then,
so did I.
Yeah. And then I realized like, no, this is real. So yeah, dude, I got to watch it.
Well, it's kind of a good segue because you guys, today we got my boy Sam on the Uncut podcast. Sam was a soccer rock star back in the day, weren't you?
I was, man. I played a lot of soccer. I actually played in a big men's league tournament this past weekend. We came in second. We lost in the finals, man. I'm 30, about to be 34, and we had 6 games this past weekend. So, to say the least,
90-minute games. What are we talking?
They were 50-minute games, small-sided, 8v8. But still, I was holding down the back for most of the games, and man, my body. Sunday night, we ended up getting home around 10:30 on Sunday evening. It was in Asheville, about an hour from my house. And man, it was hard to move on this past Monday.
All right, listeners, we're going to nerd out a little bit on soccer. All right. So yeah, it was so funny because I played back in the day growing up competitively. I actually tried out and made the ODP team when I was really young.
Nice.
But I got fucking burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
And my route, like by the time I got to my senior year in high school, like I was getting offers, but I spent my whole life just playing soccer. And you know what? I wanted to have fun. I wanted to chase girls. I wanted to party. And, you kind of look back in life and go, oh, that's definitely a regret. But I wouldn't be where I am now if I would have taken the soccer route. You know what I mean? So I'm not
I got similar feelings I had back then. So yeah, I mentioned I'm 33. So this was, 15 years ago, 18 or so. I actually quit soccer in my junior year of high school because I was burnt out. And then I ended up getting some offers through some summer camps I played well at. And I was like, man, maybe I need to revisit like playing club this coming fall and stuff. And I ended up doing that and going on to play in college a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I understand the burnout feeling. I was like, man, I want to do other stuff right now. So,
well, it's so funny because I was playing in a arena league up here in Encinitas where I live, and it's a little bit different. I'm on the plus 40 right now.
So, oh, really, man? You don't look it.
Oh, thanks. I get that all the time. I appreciate it, man. But it's crazy because it would be like an 18 plus league. So you got these teams coming in and college players who still play together, come back for the summer, and they just, dude, I can't hang with that anymore. So
yeah, man, so the team we lost to is what we were told is a bunch of former pros, like some MLS guys and a bunch of former D1 guys. So we were proud to make it to the finals, but they ran us pretty good in the finals. But yeah.
Well, man, before we get into your journey, let's hit me up. What are you grateful for today?
Man, every day I'm grateful for my health. That's like the one thing that I know, being able to wake up and do the things I love to do, is something to be very grateful for, man. And that's really what I kind of the first thing I focus on is like, I got to make sure I'm in a good spot physically and mentally, and take care of myself. And on a daily basis, man, I'm grateful for myself, for my health.
And for myself.
Yeah. Nowadays.
Shit, I'm thinking for myself.
For my health, though, for sure.
One more. Tell me the best thing that's happened to you this week.
Man, so the best thing that's happened to me this week, if you can count Sunday, man, it might be making that finals with some of my old buddies. So in that team we played, there were guys I grew up playing soccer with. We're still really close knit to this day. And we've been through a lot of things together, ups and downs. And we got to get back on the field on Sunday and play a bunch of soccer and feel like a kid again. And man, it's hard to get those feelings sometimes. And yeah, man, so that's probably the best thing this week.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to plug this because I had the unfair advantage of just listening to your podcast in 2 times the speed, by the way, because it's a great podcast. But I'm going to share it in the show links. We're going to kind of do a Cliff Notes version. And one thing that I like about what I heard is you're very open and honest and want to talk about mental health, which I think I want to spend some time on the back end of this. But you had mentioned that playing soccer was always a passion of yours. And I think when it was your senior year, you had a bump on your stomach and you found out it was a hernia. And then you decided not to tell anybody. And then from there, tell me what happened.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So fast forward, a lot of soccer growing up, and senior year, we were having a really big run for my high school team. And we were ranked number 1 in the country the year prior to that. And this year, we ended up losing that year in the kind of a fluke game, but we had a lot of expectations, and I didn't know, I had never really been injured too much. And I ended up having, like you said, I had this like bulge in my stomach, in my abdomen. And man, it kind of freaked me out. I didn't know what it was. When you're that age, kind of think you're invincible. And I was like, I'm going to keep playing. It's not hurting to the point where like I can't play. I feel it a good bit, but I'm just going to keep playing. Like, we have this incredible season coming up. I have, school soccer next year, college soccer, all that sort of stuff. So I just hide it. I don't tell anybody. And, looking back, like you said, it's easy to look back at stuff like that. But I wish I would have gotten it taken care of and told somebody and figured it out, because it ended up putting like a wrench into my freshman season when I went on to the University of South Carolina. We had a great high school season. So we ended up, winning the state championship, going undefeated, like doing all the things we wanted to accomplish. But looking back, I wish I would have been more open about that for sure. But I was scared, man. I didn't know if it was cancer. I didn't know if it was like a tumor. I didn't know what it was. Luckily, it turned out to be a hernia, but it was still to the point where I had hid it for probably over a year. It was a pretty good size. So they had to cut me open kind of the fall of my freshman year at South Carolina. And that put me out for about 3 months after surgery. And yeah, man, I remember it to this day. I was going for my physical and had a feeling like if this guy like feels around there, he might, discover it or whatnot. And sure enough, the team doctor found it, and I told him I could keep playing through it. And at this point, it was, almost as big as your fist. You could feel down there.
Oh, Jesus.
And about halfway through that fall season, me and the coaches talked, and we decided to get it taken care of. And that's what I did. So a little late, but it's easy to look back at that sort of thing and wish you did something different. But
yeah. So how long were you out for?
3 months.
3 months.
So they cut you open pretty good. It's about a 3-inch incision. They go inside your intestines and do what they need to do. But yeah, it's kind of a delicate area. So you're kind of bedridden for, 7 to 10 days. And then you kind of slowly work your way up.
Yeah. Ouch, man. And were you prescribed pills when that happened, or you were just kind of,
I don't
took
know
it like a man.
Yeah. I think I don't remember being prescribed anything that like I noticed, I think I was probably some stuff, but it wasn't nothing that I like took note of or noticed me feeling differently. But there's a lot of things going on in my life at that time that kind of like took my attention or my feelings away from like probably what they should have. I think those were some of the first like really depressed days of my life. We went through some loss. I lost some friends, that sort of stuff. And, dealing with it at that age, kind of first loss of death or feeling death and losing friends, you kind of dive into alcohol and late nights and kind of trying to, mask a lot of your emotions and pain for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you had such tragedies. I mean, you were 18 when you lost your friends, and I think,
Yeah.
in your podcast you said you lost four friends
So,
kind of back to back to back.
So what happened was it was called the Ocean Isle 7. And we had a group of friends that went down to Ocean Isle, which is a beach here in South Carolina.
Mm,
And they were from my hometown for the most part. And the house caught on fire at night and ended up killing 7 of them.
Jesus.
And so that was fall break freshman year, right after I had the surgery. And then my best buddy, who was, man, he was incredible, like super smart. He was the backup goalie on the soccer team, like bigger set dude. He passed away from drinking too much at Clemson early December of my freshman year. So it's kind of all that stuff back to back, surgery, being out. I was very active growing up too. Like that was kind of like my therapy, whether it was soccer, baseball, basketball, whatever. And then the Ocean Isle fires, which I knew them, but I didn't know them really, really well. Like they weren't any of my best friends, but we grew up together. And then my best friend died, a couple weeks later. So just kind of like, crazy range of emotions there that kind of, I think eventually was like things that I held on to for a long, long time, and never fully grieved or dealt with them or spoke about them. And I think that was foresight to some of the things that happened to me, mentally and with addiction and substance abuse later on.
Yeah, it's challenging because I know when, I lost my best friend and others in my life, it was just like the first thing I did was just started turning to the bottle and drinking to escape, to mask the pain. It's interesting when you get with your friends collectively, it's just like, all right, what are we gonna do? Let's celebrate him by having cocktails, or just draining the
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that continued for a very long time, because anytime you have that thought of depression, it's just like the easiest thing to do is have a couple cocktails, or, I know you got hooked on Xanax for a while, but it's just like, that's all I want to do. I want to numb myself. I want to fucking fade away. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to face reality. So let's numb the pain.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how your addiction continued to spiral.
Yeah. So, in those years, months, we would say after those deaths, like you said, I mean, our friends would get together and really just drink really, really heavy. And whether it be mixing in other drugs, I was never really an upper guy. I had a bunch of anxiety early on in my life, and I still deal with, plenty of anxiety. And now, I think I do it in healthy ways to work with it. But I just would use drugs and alcohol, especially alcohol, at that time to cure my anxiety, my depression, my worries, anything, we would drink. And some of my friends got into Xanax then. Some cocaine was flowing around. Like I said, I never really liked cocaine, but we would party hard. I'm sure you've talked to a lot of guys or girls that they just go out and get as drunk as they can and, try and mask all that pain, try and mask the feelings and not deal with any of it. Like we really didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about the deaths. We didn't talk about grieving. We just kind of kept moving forward with life and going from there. And then through, college, I think deep down, I knew, I had some sort of feeling towards alcohol at the time that maybe a lot of people didn't have. Like I would drink for social situations. I would drink for non-social situations. I would just drink to feel good. And, I would have friends or family members. Now my wife is like this, like she can have a drink and be okay. Like when I had one drink, I want 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks. And yeah, it makes you feel good for that moment. And it kind of makes you forget about other things that are going on. And fast forward a few years, that continues to happen. I experiment with other drugs, and I had taken some Xanax from friends, and we always kind of use them as like the hangover pill. You wake up, you have like the shakes from alcohol, or you've been drinking too much or just partying, whatever it is. It's like, all right, well, I'm gonna take a Xanax on Sunday and like relax, chillax. I honestly looked at it as like my recovery pill. And I moved to New York, and I end up getting hooked up with a doctor in New York who I knew was, you talk about doctor shopping and like, or just going to doctors that are going to write scripts. And so I knew if I went in there and asked for Xanax, he would give it to me. And sure enough, that's what I did. And that's really where the addiction, grabbed a hold of me where, who knows how much longer I would have lived if I didn't eventually get help, 18 months later after that. But it was a roller coaster ride there where I don't think I could live mentally at the time. I didn't think I could live without Xanax almost on a daily basis. And I would go on really bad benders where, I would get a prescription, and it all started with, say, I think 30 half milligrams or something. So smaller prescription. I went back and got more. So I think I ended up getting around 90 a month, full Xanax bars. And I would take them all within a couple day period sometimes. And I just couldn't stop. Like, it just continued to go. When I didn't feel, when they would start to wear off and you would start to get the withdrawals, you just continue to find ways to get more, to take more, to feel normal. I tell people, it's like your body's going up and down so much. You just want something to like kind of get back to level with like your different type of, your chemicals in your brain and stuff. And I felt like I had to have Xanax to be normal, like to feel normal, or to like go out and be able to talk to people without like shaking or being super nervous or just like in withdrawal. I felt like I had to have Xanax. And for the next 18 months, that's what it did. It continued to snowball. I just continued to get so dependent on it where I didn't care what was going on in my life. Like, I had to figure out a way to get it. And, of course, like I would go on a bad bender, and then I wouldn't perform well at work. So then I would be depressed, and then I'd have anxious about that. And then, it just continues to build over time. And it got to the point where, I knew my friends started to notice it. I knew my roommate started to notice it. I knew my family members started to notice it. And people would ask me, and I think for a long time I was really good at like covering up my drinking, covering up my Xanax use. And it was really any type of benzos I could get my hands on. It wasn't always Xanax. It could be Valium. It could be Klonopin, kind of anything in that category. And the first treatment I went to, I remember getting asked, my parents flew up. I had a really bad bender. My roommate ends up calling my parents. My dad comes up, and I go into inpatient treatment. And for me, it just, honestly, it really fucked with me mentally. And I thought I was a failure. I thought the world was crashing down on me. I thought, I was embarrassed. I thought people would think different of me. I thought I was a loser. I thought like I would never be able to accomplish anything else in my life. I thought the world was crashing in on me. And honestly, that just made a lot of my drinking and Xanax use worse, because I would go to these inpatient meetings, and I remember I'd walk by like a liquor store on my way back to the train stop. And, I would tell myself walking into the meeting or to the outpatient meetings, I'm not going to stop at the liquor store. Like, I'm not supposed to be drinking in this program. I'm not supposed to be using anything. But sure enough, I would go to that meeting. We would talk about our ups and downs. We talk, hear these, horror stories and all this sort of stuff. And I'd be walking out of there and like, screw it. Like, I would go get mini bottles, pour them in drinks, go home, basically get shit-faced alone. And one thing that was always tough for me was my prescription date. So I would, try my very best. I would get that prescription and take them all. And I would run out, say if I took them all a month prescription, I would take them all in a week. And then for the next, 10 days, I would be in really bad shape with withdrawal, trying to catch up on work, trying to get things, back in order from what I thought about would be in order. And then I would maybe have a good week or two. I even remember like the day I relapsed the last time, I played soccer that morning, and I had a great morning playing soccer. And of course my addiction kicked in, was like, hey man, you're doing good. Like, go pick up your prescription. And so yeah, in and out of outpatient treatment. And it, all came to an end of my Xanax use that day, where I went and played soccer. My prescription date was up the few days prior, so I knew I could go get this prescription refill, and went and got the prescription and went on a 3-day bender where I took them all. And, I don't know what I did. There's no, by the time,
zero recollection. Yeah.
Zero recollection for about, probably 2.5 days or so. This was a Saturday. I end up coming to no Xanax. heavily drinking vodka at this time. So drinking vodka, taking Xanax. And I mean, still to this day, I have no idea what I did in those days. I woke up, I had huge cuts on my hand. And my doorman at my building saw me come home that Tuesday and was really worried about me. And we had, I was always very friendly with the doormen, so they knew me well. And they ended up calling my roommate, who's one of my best friends to this day. And, I think him, the doorman, they easily could have saved my life, because I was stumbling back up to the room to probably, who knows, I don't know what I was going to do, but I know I had a bottle of vodka, and I know I was, on a 3.5 day bender, 2.5 day bender. They called him. He worked right across the street, came and found me passed out in between, in our hallway, almost like right outside of our elevator on our floor. And he got me back into the room, called the ambulance, called my parents. And I had admitted my problem to some of my friends and family members a few months prior. And it actually happened when I was like really depressed and down on a come down from being like, on a bender. So I was like really depressed and just like pissed at myself, and just, they knew for the most part, or they knew I was struggling. So my mom couldn't come. She didn't want to come see me like this. So my dad and my sister flew up to New York from South Carolina. And at this point, I don't know what was it for me to just say, I'm ready for whatever, but I was just done. I was like, I got to figure this shit out. I'm willing to do what y'all tell me to do.
Yeah.
I can't control it. I think I'm doing good, and I fall back off, frequently. And luckily my sister and my dad and my mom and friends and family, I hadn't lost all of them yet. Like, I go to rehab and I end up, talking to individuals still to this day who, like, they didn't have family, they didn't have friends, luckily. And very fortunate for me that I had these family and friends that put a plan together for me and showed me a ton of love and a ton of support. And they said, we're going to take you to this facility in Asheville. So back in Asheville. And they knew for me personally, it would be great to be like outside doing something in nature, not being stuck, maybe in, like, if people think of a traditional rehab or treatment, like I wasn't in like a building with like white walls and like talking to therapists all the time. I was out there hiking. I was in a group of guys, and we went on like hiking trails for 5 days a week. We'd go back and do our therapy and stuff, usually on the weekend, and then go back out and hike another trail. So I just kind of gave in. I said, all right, let's do it.
I was just going to say, was there any resistance whatsoever going in, or did you just fully surrender?
There was a little resistance, but not much. Not at this point. I had been battling this shit in my head for so long, privately, and in silence, that I was just so scared what was going to happen. Like, I probably would have died. Probably could have gone down the heroin route, could have gone down the fentanyl route. Like, I don't know what was next. I ended up having a really good friend pass away while I was in treatment from fentanyl. So I don't know, I don't know what clicked, but I think it was the support from my mom, my sister, and my dad. And
how long were you at this facility?
I was there for 38 days. So 38 days. And, when we were leaving that facility, we had different options, and go to sober living, go to like, different types of homes that you can go to when you're getting out of treatment. And I remember when I got to treatment, I was like, I'm gonna go back to New York when I get out of here, and I'm gonna like, right my wrongs and like figure this shit out and like be successful and all that sort of stuff. And as I continued to go through the days in treatment, I was like, that might not be the best thing for me. And luckily, very fortunate to have two amazing parents that were like, you can come back and live with us. And being a 30-year-old, that's not what you really want to do. You're like 29. I think I was at the time like, oh, I got to go back and live with my parents, but they're two amazing people, and they're very supportive. And they said, we'll turn this into, but we'll be here for you. We're going to help you. Like, we'll be here for you. We'll support you. We'll like we'll go to meetings with you, whatever you want to do. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go back and live with my parents. And, so that's what I did.
Let's give a
But I
little
was
shout
still,
out. Should we give a
yeah,
shout out to mom and dad? Mom and
yeah,
dad. Yeah.
yeah. Mom and
Represent,
dad,
man.
Jerry and Sam Kleckley,
Yeah.
they're awesome. And my sister was incredibly supportive too. And she went through a different type of addiction. She had a eating disorder when I was in high school that was, got to be pretty darn severe. And they ended up turning, when I was a senior in high school, they kind of ended up turning our house into like a recovery space for her. So they had dealt with something similar like that in the past. And as you know, man, like addiction runs through my family, aunts and uncles and stuff. So
So
they
you and
had,
your sister have got to be a great support system for each other right now, since you
yes,
both experienced what you went through with addiction.
yeah. I mean, it's incredible. Like she was insanely supportive of me. I mean, she was like the first one I remember seeing in New York. Like she flew up with my dad. She's 3.5 years older than me. We have gotten a lot closer in, our 20s and now 30s. And I mean, she's incredibly supportive. She's an incredible individual anyways, and very strong, sister. And I'm just very fortunate that she was there for me too, to be there with my mom and dad. Cause in a lot of those times she would be like, she was almost the one like calling the shots, because my mom and dad, they loved me so much, but they didn't want to like enable me anymore. So Jenny was, could put her fist down and say, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, love it. So for somebody who's listening who might be struggling, what is your biggest piece of advice?
It's difficult, but you got to talk about it. Like you got to open up, you got to start taking that shame, taking that guilt, and, maybe tell one person, maybe go to a meeting, maybe just call BetterHelp or call one of these, now lines where you can get somebody on the other end just to talk. Because for me, I still remember this letter my dad wrote me. It was a bunch of guys I had looked up to, guys and girls I had looked up to, whether it be sports figures or actors or just like business people that have gone through addiction. And I remember that to this day, that like, that was the first time it clicked for me. Like, holy shit, don't have to be a failure. I don't have to like lose everything in my life. I don't have to like, end up on the streets and just think like life's never going to be okay again. And I remember they're like Michael Phelps, Robert Downey Jr., like these super successful people, Brett Favre, that have like had gone through addiction and, found their way out of it to what I thought would be, awesome people. And so I remember thinking like, man, like maybe I'm not alone. So for me, it would be try and open up, try and find somebody you can talk to, go to a meeting, just try and be a little bit more vulnerable, and also give yourself some grace. Cause it's millions of people in this world that are going through very similar things with alcohol and substance abuse and addiction and mental health in general, whether it's anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder. So give yourself some grace. That could be a great first step and talk to some people.
Don't you love it? Because, you think about when you were in the depths of your addiction and you felt ashamed and a loser, as you said, but now that you have completely pivoted and changed your life. And when you share your story, it's amazing how many people are like, I need help. Me too. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. It's empowering me to realize that, like you just said, all of us are struggling with something. All of us.
Yep.
When I started Recovery Rockstars and I would share it, like, oh my God, I need to send my brother to you, or my sister needs to listen to the podcast, or my aunt, my uncle, this. I mean, everybody knows somebody who's affected by addiction. So, thank you for coming on and do this. And I want to talk to you about what you're doing now, because you're a pretty boss, bro. I know you're on this podcast, but I was listening to your podcast, Live Life in Motion. Talk to me, man. Talk to me about it. Tell us. Let's give a plug here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the plug. Appreciate the kind words. So, as you mentioned, like stories, talking to people, I found that to be so powerful to me. Hearing people talk about their struggles and their stories was so empowering, and just such powerful messages for myself. And I said, what can I do? Like, how can I like spread some of this? And like, who knows? I mean, if it helps one person, if it doesn't help anybody for 2 years, then it helps one person, like it's worth it. So I decided, I knew some of these people I had talked to early on in recovery and in my addiction that had, what do you want to call them? Like crazy stories, like, crazy ups and downs, but now they're like, hopefully on the other side of it. And I was like, I want to share some of these stories because I know how powerful they were to me. So I'm going to see if I can do it. And I started the podcast, Live Life in Motion, end of 2020. I had some connections to some guys that I thought would be good guests to start off with. And like I mentioned, Brett Favre, I had a connection to him, and people don't know that he really struggled with addiction and pills and alcohol early on in his career, even in his MVP season of like 96 and 97. And I just wanted to share stories and hopefully to inspire. And that's what I did. And now this week was week 94. Had a guy on this week called Derek Hamilton. He was wrongfully convicted of murder and spent 23 years in jail and ended up doing a bunch of jailhouse lawyer work and eventually won his freedom. And now he's a big advocate for mental health and like the wrongfully accused. So the narrative isn't always around addiction. That's how it started, was to raise awareness for addiction and mental health. But I'll have anybody on from somebody like Derek, somebody, a sports figure to a neuroscientist to learn more about the brain. So it's been a lot of fun. And I love hearing people get back to me being like, man, I would have never listened to that guy. But
no, I've listened to a couple of them, and you're a great host. You're, a great interviewer. And I love that you're like, yeah, I think I'm going to start a podcast. So one of your first guests is Brett Favre. That's pretty impressive, dude. That's not normal.
We had a connection. I caddied. There's a BMW Pro-Am here in Greenville, where I live. And I was able to caddy for him. He came in as a celebrity, and I caddied for him during the golf tournament. And we kind of just hit it off, man. I remember being on that golf tournament. Somebody offered him a beer, and he said, I've been sober since 1997. And I didn't know that. And that kind of clicked with me forever. And I knew when hey, I'm going to start my podcast, I was like, you know what? I think Brett would come on. And that was kind of always in the back of my head. So when it started, I reached out to him, and, he said yes. And we recorded on a Sunday night. I'll never forget it. I just had COVID and was feeling like crap. And he was like, hey, you want to record in 15 minutes? And I was like, yeah. I just popped on and I already had my notes there. So, but yeah, it's been cool and been able to talk to people I never would have thought I could talk to before.
That's so rad. And I know you mentioned that you struggle with anxiety. Do you get anxious when you host and run your podcast?
Yeah, I think I do, but I think I've bottled it to a point where it's good anxiety. Yeah. It's honestly anxiety because I want to do a good job. I want to be prepared. I want the guests to have a good time and feel like it's a valuable conversation.
Totally.
So I do a lot of the pre-work, just like you mentioned, listening to my podcast or something like that. But yeah, of course, I try and hide it probably when somebody comes on like that. But I think once the conversation gets flowing, just like Recovery Rockstars, it's pretty conversational. Totally. It's not like hard hit, it's not like some crazy list of questions I got to run down and avoid certain things. It's usually open, honest, vulnerable conversations. So that makes it a little bit easier.
Dude, I remember one time it was at the very beginning and I was interviewing this legit rock star girl. And I was so nervous. And we started off, I'm like, yeah, so you're a songwriter, singer-songwriter. I totally backed up. I mean, a singer. Dude, it was the funniest shit ever. And I kept on going back and editing it. And I was making a remix and be going, you're a songwriter. Oh, dude, it was so funny. It's just cool, man. I love what you're doing. And, I love that you're vulnerable and sharing your story. And anytime somebody listens to this, it just empowers them. And you just realize you're not alone.
Yeah,
you're not alone.
That's the biggest thing, man.
You're not alone.
But when you're in those depths of it, you feel alone.
You feel alone.
And hearing something like this, anything, it could be something on social media, it could be a short clip, just holy shit, I'm not alone, because you're not. And it is affecting more people than it's not, one way or the other.
Totally. Well, I'm going to end here. Plug it. How can people find you?
Sure. My podcast is Live Life in Motion Podcast. All podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple, all that sort of stuff. On Instagram, it's Live Life in Motion Podcast. So that's where they can find me. Most of my content's on there. My personal page is linked to there too. livelifeinmotionpodcast.com is the website. So yeah, that's where they can find me. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. And last, when's the next game, dude? When are you gonna Just clear house.
Yeah, I'm in a Tuesday league, so I'm trying to make some more games on Tuesday. Our season just ended, and it should start back up. I think like the third Tuesday of September. So
nice. Well, Sam, much love, brother. Thank you for being on the Recovery Rockstars Uncut podcast.
Yeah, man, and shout out to Donnie Starkins for hooking us up together.
Yes, my boy. Yeah, I actually have a mastermind with him, so I spoke to him last night. Great heart, great guy.
For real. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Sometimes my story, right, can help people out. So if you're out there, share your story, start talking with people, and I promise you, it'll do you some good.
Love it. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks for being in recovery, rock stars. I guess today's episode is done. In all seriousness, though, Kevin appreciates you being part of this community. RecoveryRockstars.com. Want to email us? Kevin@RecoveryRockstars.com. Facebook, Recovery Rockstars. Instagram us @RecoveryRockstars. Kevin's wardrobe brought to you by Kevin. Kevin's transportation brought to you by Kevin. Kevin's cable bill paid by Kevin so he can keep this podcast going. Goodbye.